welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports. Coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the number one network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the number one sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond, in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. There's no one we love more than the good old boys down south, in the land of the free and the home of the brave, on a beautiful November the 19th, 2019. Ground on the Deportes, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Charlton, it's a beautiful day down here. The weather could not have been more inviting. Getting ready to sit back and relax and watch some college football again here on a Tuesday night. Eastern Michigan and Northern Illinois.
Did you say Tuesday or Saturday? I think they got their schedules crossed up, Big C. I know that kids go to college to get an education, not a baptism in football, but it is all fair and love and war. It's such a great world. I mean, there's a movie coming out called Don't You Want to Be My Neighbor? The good old boys doing that again. And everybody loves this time of year. It's holidays, but it's also stressed out. My bank actually gave me a dividend. They gave me a dividend, and I thanked them, Big C. So nothing wrong with that. Everybody's out shopping. People are in the festive holiday mood. People are blowing the horn at the other people driving them by on the highway, Big C. Are you guys nicer down south when the holiday season comes around, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, as we look at the freeways down here, we have these bottlenecks all the time. Our freeways generally during rush hour are a parking lot.
Yeah, it feels like a parking lot at times, especially when you're competing for spaces. I just hope that everybody take your time. You're going to get there soon. They'll still let you buy that gift if that's what you want to buy. And speaking of gifts, I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you. Big C Sports, brought to you by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You'll hear from our sponsors. You're here. Welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he will do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. Also, you can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast Television, launching on Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and other smart TVs all over the universe. Big C, I want to get into our National Suicide Hotline. And I'm not an obtuse person. I pay attention to a lot of things that I can see. And I know people are getting ready to get the turkeys to sacrifice themselves for a gluttony. And they want to buy those gifts that are put up on the storeroom shelves, Big C. There's still a lot of people that don't have a place to stay. They may have fought for this country, and they're sleeping on the sidewalks as we're stepping over them to go buy that toy. Big C, we have a National Suicide Hotline, 800-273-8255, 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. I know it's a nuisance to some people because they don't want to be concerned about it. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, we have a lot of people who turn their backs on those that are in need every day, Charlton. We think about the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number is there, Charlton, and this doesn't cost anybody anything. As we think about the gluttony that we go through during the holiday season here in America, whether it's on food or whether it's on gifts, this is something that you can give free of charge. You can give out the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, Charlton, to help some of those people, Charlton, that are desperately seeking some encouragement. As we look at this horrific disease called suicide in this country, and over 20 veterans a day are committing this, Charlton, we have to find a way to stem the tide of that.
Yeah.
Not just in the veteran community, but in the everyday layman society community, Charlton. People need help. They need a place to turn to without being judged.
Yep.
And this is what the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number does, Charlton. As we think about caring for people for the holidays, thinking about loved ones, all of those people that are out there committing suicide, Charlton, have somebody who loves them.
Yeah.
Let's not have them take themselves away from those loved ones, Charlton. Find a way to remedy this aging disease, Charlton, that's hurting so many people. I look at the weekends, Charlton. Every Saturday and Sunday morning, I get up early before daylight. I put together a food package the night before because I know where a lot of different homeless people sleep.
Yeah.
And I go pass this food out, Charlton. These people are sleeping out in the cold. They're wet. They're damp. And you know, they have nobody to turn to.
Yeah.
And I take what I have left over in my house, Charlton, and I put together meals and I go pass it out to these people. These people are living day to day, just like many people who have committed suicide are living day to day.
Yeah.
And we have to find a way, any way in our heart, to help these people out, Charlton. And the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number is one of those avenues to help people out.
You know, and it's 800-273-8255, 800-273-8255, or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. I've never given $1 million to feed anybody. And as I still hear about, because it's real talk, Big C, it seems like a lot of people are doing more of what we started doing 4 years ago. They used to just get on and read scores, and now they're actually talking about things that actually matter to people. And it's not even about Colin Kaepernick. Again, people can say what they want, but I ask anyone that's ever given over $1 million to feed people, please hold your hand up, whether you want one person to get a job or not. If you've given $1 million of your own money to make sure that people could eat, that to make sure that people were not hungry, just hold your hand up as people are getting their consensus on whether someone should have a job or not. Again, if you've given $1 million of your own money for someone to eat, put your hand up. Big C, that has to amount for more than playing in a game. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, it does. It's being prescient about what's going on in society, having concerns about others. When you have a social movement, Charlton, you have to give more than just your words and your body. You have to put in financially. Colin Kaepernick did all of those things. But what Colin Kaepernick did more than anything else, Charlton, that he exposed society for its ill-begetting deeds, Charlton, that it harms people and it leaves people behind, and it doesn't care about everybody.
No, it doesn't.
Colin Kaepernick exposed that. He exposed that on America's largest scale. Mainstream society didn't appreciate that.
Yep.
Just like a lot of people didn't appreciate President Obama because of his skin complexion, Charlton.
Yeah.
The same thing they did not appreciate about Colin Kaepernick talking about social injustice.
Well, I just appreciate it. I'm working with an insurance company that's going to be launching a national insurance policies guaranteed issue. Mental health is part of that, too. Really appreciate Walter Henry, my partner, with that. I want to get into the world. You know, sometimes they say if you're not cheating, you're not trying. I heard that from a lot of good old boys in Texas. In all this talk, you brought it up the other day about Pete Rose, and, you know, they don't want him to have any acknowledgement for what he's done. That's great. You know, everybody has a little hitch in their giddy up at times, Big C. But them good old boys down in Houston, the Houston Astros, and there's a lot of talk about this proof that they were cheating, you know, stealing signs in the 2017 World Series against the LA Dodgers. And I'm sure if you look long enough throughout sports, in anything, people cheat to get ahead. Wall Street, they cheat to get ahead. Look at what's going on in the White House. You think the current administration hasn't done some things that are nefarious to get ahead? Big C, cheating is real. But if you're the Dodgers, and you're not a dumb person, so that means you read. If you're just dumb, you get all emotional. But if you're not a dumb person, anyone out there listening, that means you read. Do the Dodgers fight for the vacating of the Houston Astros 2017 World Series championship? Big C, your thoughts?
Professional sports is never going to vacate a title, Charlton. Cheating goes on, and it's gone on throughout the history of sports. I mean, the minute electronics came into play, minute binoculars came into play, Charlton, teams started stealing signals.
Yeah.
And so this is nothing new. If you want to talk about it in the sports realm, the bottom line, I don't care what you do, you know, whether it's a steroid era, whether it's a visual cheating era, Charlton.
Yeah.
You still have to play the game. You still have to execute when you're in the field of play.
Yeah.
You still have to execute at the mound, Charlton. I don't care what a pitch is throwing. If you can't hit it, you can't hit it.
Right.
You know, being tipped off, you still don't know where the ball is going to move to.
Yeah.
You have to make contact with the bat. So, I mean, all of these allegations about cheating, whether they're true or are not founded, Charlton, you still have to play the game.
You got to play the game. And whether it's Deflategate, the Tom Brady and the New England Patriots, or the Spygate, I think that's also the New England Patriots, or the team that's been in half the Super Bowls in the last 20 years. I think that's also the New England Patriots, Big C. An owner that got into some trouble that people forgot about, and Kaepernick can't get a job, but he wasn't dealing with the young girls, Big C. One team. Does that make any sense, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I mean, even with all the allegations made about the New England Patriots, they still go out and execute on the field. You still have to tackle.
Yeah.
Football, everybody runs the same plays in football, offensively and defensively, Charlton. The game is about desire. Can you execute on time? Can you get the ball off properly? When they talked about Deflategate, I think both teams are playing with the same football, Charlton.
Yeah.
So, it's not making a difference. You're still gripping the same football.
Yeah.
You're still tackling and running the same plays. So it comes down to that execution.
Yeah, it comes down to execution. It's all about execution. So for my friends at USC and all the talk about vacating that 2004 National Championship, they beat Oklahoma. At least I saw it on TV. They beat Oklahoma 55-19 down in the Orange Bowl down in Florida. And I know they had to vacate whatever because Reggie Bush's alleged girlfriend had given some money for a house, or somebody got the money for a house. I know he dated one of the wealthiest women in Hollywood. Does that make any sense, Big C?
Well, what you do financially versus playing. I mean,
Yes.
that's a totally different entity that comes in off of the field. We're talking about actions within the sideline.
Yeah, that's true, and that's amazing how we know that thing is old and tired, how you don't want them to have any money, but you'll make all the money off their backs. I want to just ask you one thought as we get into the talk about some NBA basketball, and then I want to get on some NFL talk. I'm hearing that NBA ratings are down. I know last year's final was down to 14%, and it was the Toronto Raptors and the Golden State Warriors. Obviously, the Durant was banged up, so there were some issues about him not being in the games. We know Boogie Cousins got hurt. There are people saying, well, a Canadian team is not good for TV. We've heard that for many, many years. It was great for Canada. But also, and I want to get your thoughts, this talk about too much basketball can spoil things. Summer League is always televised now, Big C. You get to see guys that are trying to make a league. And then we have teams playing all over the world now. Teams playing in India this year. Sacramento played Indiana. They went over to India, Big C. And then you have this load management where people work hard for the money. They buy a ticket for their family. They go to a game and they say, what do you mean Kawhi's not playing? We're in L.A., Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, as I said before, the NBA doesn't start for most Americans until Christmas, Charlton. There's a wealth of football being played right now, and football that's very integral and means something. You have the college football playoff rankings that are out here at the end of the college football season. You got the NFL jockeying for playoff position, Charlton. The NBA will still go for another 4 months after football is over. So people are, and you have football is being played 7 nights a week.
Yep.
The NBA is trying to compete with college and professional football. It just doesn't have the stature at this time of the year.
And something that I think is also happening that people aren't paying attention to. Back in the day, I remember you told me that you had to watch the NBA Finals, I think at midnight or after the regular news went off because it was not televised live. And that's the case for a lot of people. And then it got to the point where the NBA Finals, they were actually being televised. You know, prime time, even if it's it could be a Sunday at a noon time, or they started moving it to in the afternoon when people got off work. But something that's happened is technology. Technology means you don't need that Nielsen box in your home. I think the ratings are up because I see more guys, whether I'm in an airport or even at a stadium, they see watching the game itself, they're on their phones and they're watching on their handheld devices. In fact, they're unplugging the TV antenna or the cable box, and people are not accounting for how many people are watching it on their tablets and their smartphones. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I'm not going to watch it on a tablet. I'm not going to watch any sports on a phone, Charlton. I got an 82-inch television that sits in front of me and watches me. And so people that are going out in public watching stuff, I'm not with that. My eyes are bad, so I need as big a screen as I can get.
I understand. Imagine like Radio Raheem when Big C's walking around with a big TV, 82-inch TV on your shoulders bumping into people. That might not be a good scene, Big C. Tonight's basketball schedule for NBA, Golden State is at Memphis. You have Portland at New Orleans, the Phoenix Sun at the Sacramento Kings, and the Oklahoma City Thunder at the LA Lakers. A lot of these teams, they don't have the same players that they had last year, but especially if you're over in Silicon Valley, San Francisco, over in this part of California, Big C, everybody wants to know what's the latest advice, the latest gadget that Google puts out or that, any electronic device, they want to have it here first. It's just the way it is. And I know a lot of people that have watched multiple games on the device and not on their TV sets at home. Imagine when they come out with an 82-inch cell phone, Big C. That make any sense, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I mean, televisions are bigger and bigger every time you turn around. And so as they talk about the Nielsen box, Charlton, they really don't exist anymore. There's so many different platforms that you can design on your television. I have a smart television that comes with a dozen different platforms on it, Charlton. All you got to do is talk to it.
Yeah.
Google and Alexa is automatically programmed into the television. All you got to do is speak to the remote control. So many people have moved away from what was standard television, Charlton, because of the different modems that you can connect to your television.
Yep, that's true. So technology, until they catch up with technology, they can't say the ratings are down. They're just saying the old way that we got information is down. I want to get into what's up, and that's Big C's NFL Top 10 rankings. Everybody has their own opinion. And I just want to acknowledge this change that's coming into the sports universe when people want to say that it's like, what does society get off on trying to break an African-American man? Like to break him financially, to break him spiritually, to break him contractually, to just break him. And like Rosa Parks, why did she have to give up her seat on a bus? And she said no, but why did she have to even be asked to give up her seat on a bus? Because society sometimes wants to break people, Big C. And when you want to break a person, it's really a dog whistle to all the others that, boy, you can be next if you get out of line. I just want to bring that up because the NFL is changing, and I want to make sure that people still have freedom of speech. I would say it's almost anathema. The Oakland Raiders making Big C's top 10. I know John Gruden has gotten rid of a lot of the good old boys that were drafted by other coaches and GMs, but for them to crack a top 10 and we're not even at Thanksgiving, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the Raiders have played themselves into second place in the AFC West, Jonathan. They've played well above the schedule that John Gruden had set for this team. The draft picks have panned out, the trades have panned out, and they're playing tremendous football.
They are playing tremendous football. I know they were hoping that Phillip Rivers was not colorblind, or they was hoping he would stay colorblind. No, they were hoping he was not colorblind last night, but I think he was colorblind. Was he confused with that light blue versus the white uniforms that Kansas City had? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Phillip Rivers hasn't played great the past couple of games, Charlton, against the Raiders or the Chiefs.
No, he hasn't. Speaking of the Chiefs, number 9, their defense is not that good. When you win by a touchdown, and Phillip Rivers throws almost as many passes to your defensive backs as he throws to his own receivers, Big C, and you only win by a touchdown, that's not good, but offensively, they can score to keep them in games. Kansas City coming in at number 9, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when you have Patrick Mahomes, you always have a chance in the NFL. But you think about the Chiefs already have lost 6 games this year, where that's more games than they lost all of last season, Charlton. The Kansas City Chiefs have one of the worst defenses that I ever seen for a team that can win. If not for Patrick Mahomes, I think this team would be one of the worst teams in the NFL because I'm watching players night in and night out every time I see them play, scared to tackle somebody.
Yeah, they seem to be scared to tackle a lot of people. A team that not necessarily scared to tackle, but not necessarily in the right position to tackle. Number 8, the Dallas Cowboys. Offense is helping them win, Big C. Your thoughts?
This team has been winning by offense. I mean, I put their defense a step ahead of the Kansas City defense. But the phenomenal quarterback play that they're getting from Dak Prescott, Charlton, has got Dallas Cowboys tops in the NFC East.
Thinking of a team that's actually playing good offense and defense, the Minnesota Vikings. I know people want to say, you know, the Kirk Cousins or whatever the money he's guaranteed, $84 million. The more they run the football, the more they're going to win because their defense is legit, Big C. The new version of the Purple People Eaters, Big C. Your thoughts?
The Vikings have had an outstanding defense for the last 3 years in the NFL. Now their offense is catching up with their defense. Dalvin Cook has stayed healthy all year. He's leading the NFL in rushing, and Kirk Cousins hasn't made mistakes in the last 3 games.
When you got Dalvin Cook, just hand it off to him every now and then. Number 6, New Orleans Saints, Big C. Is it Drew Brees? Is he back? It seems like he's up and down, but I think overall he's still going to be that all-pro performer, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, the New Orleans Saints have a very balanced attack. Everything that they have goes through Michael Thomas. This is a player that potentially could be in the MVP consideration, Charlton, but the defense has been better than advertised this year, not in that Who Dat Nation.
Yeah, that Who Dat Nation is something else, Big C. Speaking of Who Dat likes the cheese sticks, it's not Philly cheese sticks, but they like them in Wisconsin. And when you look at the Green Bay Packers, with discount double check, this is the same team that struggled against the Chargers, and this team was atop their division. And the Chargers are struggling, but they had a chance to show, Green Bay who the better team was, at least down in Carson, Big C. Give me your feeling on Green Bay. They seem like they're a paper tiger so far. Your thoughts?
Well, this is a team that's been heckle and jive, but they're 8-2 on the season.
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers, when he's hot, he's as good as any quarterback in the NFL. The defense has been up and down, but they've been more consistent lately. Aaron Jones has done a tremendous job running the football for the Packers this year.
When you look at the New England Patriots, there's a lot of talk. And, this is just, it is what it is. But to have if you can lip read, you can see that Tom Brady was having some words with his offensive guy on the sideline. Not a big deal. People do it all the time. But New England, maybe there's a little bit of crack in that glass ceiling, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, the Patriots are really smarting because they don't have any receivers that can just dominate a secondary, Charlton. And so this offense has been a struggle all year long. Tom Brady has only thrown 7 touchdowns in his last 4 games, and he didn't throw one in his last game, Charlton. But the defense has been the best in the NFL all year long. When people remember the 85 Bears,
yeah,
the defense for the Patriots right now is just as good as the 85 Bears.
And those are strong words, Big C. Now, when you look at number 2, it's amazing the Seattle Seahawks have not lost a game on the road. Their only 2 losses came at home against New Orleans, special teams, Tom returns for a touchdown, and then Jacksonville beat them straight up. But this is a team that has gone on the road, and they've had the home field advantage, if that makes any sense. Your thoughts?
Well, they've been comfortable away from home. Russell Wilson has done a miraculous job. People talk about him in MVP consideration, Charlton. The thing about the Seattle Seahawks is that they haven't dominated anybody this year. And all 8 of their victories, they've done just enough to win. They don't have a double-digit win all year long. So that's one of my concerning points about them. The defense, they got to up the pass rush. They've been tremendous against the run.
Yeah, they really have. And then everybody's number 1 team so far. And again, NFL is week in, week out. It's a make-or-miss league, Big C. It's always about blocking and tackling. They didn't do either well when they lost the game to Cleveland earlier this year. And I know they lost the game at Kansas City too. But right now, it looks like they've figured it out. They've figured it out how to take a guy that nobody really wanted to believe in, and they learned to build around his strength. The Baltimore Ravens, I can't wait to see the game they play against the Rams coming up. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, they've played spectacular football, no doubt about it. I mean, their offense have done things this year that we haven't seen in quite some time in the NFL. The defense, I think, is the better part of the Baltimore Ravens. Everyone talks about the electrifying runs and passes of Lamar Jackson, but they've forgotten about how well that the Ravens defense is playing. I think they're playing second to the New England Patriots. The guys have been getting after people. They play smash-mouth, old-time football. The physicality, one of the things about football today is that people think about the game being soft.
Yeah.
The Baltimore Ravens don't play that way. They still play smash-mouth football.
Yeah, they're very just impressive. I mean, it's amazing how they've taken this whole team and they've made them new. You know how oftentimes you hear, well, a coach has to go because his team's not winning, or a player has to go because his team's not winning. This is a team that had a quarterback that really couldn't run, and Flacco, Big C, and they were seeing the writing on the wall, and they went against the current of every other GM in the league, Big C, and they went after Jackson, and it's made a huge difference to build their team around him. I want to just ask you your thoughts on the crowd in Mexico last night. I love NFL football that you can take it to other parts of the world, and it's still loved. I mean, I thought they had as well a showing in Mexico, and they've only played 4 times down in Mexico. And when you think about a lot of teams go over to Europe, even some foolish talk about some teams making Europe their home city, and it doesn't make any sense. Mexico is a great place for football. I'd love to see it more than just once a year or every other year. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the problem with playing in Mexico, Charlton, as Azteca Stadium is the altitude. You're talking about a stadium that's 7,300 feet altitude, which makes it very difficult for NFL players. You talk about the size of the linemen in the NFL. It's not a healthy condition for them to have to play in that more than once or twice a year.
Yeah, that may be true, and they turned out, and I really appreciate how Mexico supported United States football. Now, these conversations happen after the Chargers' second consecutive divisional loss, Oakland, and then Kansas City. Who should be on the hot seat? And the many media people have their own opinion. Is it Anthony Lynn, the head coach, or Phillip Rivers? They should call him Phillip Interception Rivers, and I would say Rivers should be on the hot seat. Anthony Lynn coached the same team to the playoffs last year, and now this year, he's not the one throwing interceptions, but I know he's the one coming up when people say, well, maybe we need to move on. They were only in the playoffs last year. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, this is a team that won 12 games last year, and they're struggling. Phillip Rivers is struggling. I watched Phillip, and, he seems to be struggling on the deep ball. He's always had an awkward delivery of his passes. He's not a conventional thrower. But as the age is coming along, as we see with him, we see with Brady, we see with Eli Manning, Ben Roethlisberger is out, Drew Brees has been hurt. These are some of the questions that you have to look at as an organization. Is it time to move on? He's in the option year of his quarterback. He's lost 2 consecutive divisional games. He's thrown 7 interceptions in his last 2 games.
Incredible.
Now, if this was another quarterback, they would be talking about benching him.
Yeah.
7 interceptions. If it was Jameis Winston, they'd be like, he's got to go. But this is Phillip Rivers, who was a 12-game winner last year. But, Charlton, things seem to be going south for the Chargers at this point.
Yeah, I would love, competition. I was told a long time ago that competition will separate people. You'll see people that really want it based on giving them the same opportunity. I mean, don't put someone's hand behind their back and make them compete with guys who don't have that to deal with. Competition helps make a better team. If you're going to go into that, I hear $4 or $5 billion stadium in Los Angeles, then you want to get people to come. You can't have a guy throwing 7 picks in the last 2 games. That's just my opinion. Competition, it solves that problem. Should the Dallas Cowboys quarterback, Dak Prescott, be in the MVP conversation? And Jerry Jones needs to hear this. I would say yes, Big C. Some people still aren't feeling it because all he does is win, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, all the naysayers about Dak Prescott and the job that he has done in his 4 years in the NFL, and even more so in the last 3 games that he has played. If you look at him statistically, there's no quarterback playing better over their last 3 games than Dak Prescott. He's thrown for 1,100 yards. He's thrown 9 interceptions. And the Dallas Cowboys are winning, Charlton. That's what people have to look at, is his productivity. And the benchmark for Dak Prescott money-wise, you got to look at Jared Goff, what he got from the Los Angeles Rams. You look at Carson Wentz, what he got from the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah.
All 3 of these quarterbacks are in the same draft. The Dallas Cowboys are playing better, and their quarterback is playing better than those other 2 quarterbacks, Charlton. They're leading their divisions. The Rams are on the outside looking in, trying to make the playoffs, as well as the Eagles.
Yep.
But Dak Prescott, numbers alone, you have to put him in that MVP conversation.
Especially if you listen to what you just said. Just look like the competition. Competition to determine how much money somebody makes, not whether you like how he looks or not. That's just my opinion, but maybe I'm naive. Every NFL team, think about every NFL's team, there's this one trait that they wish they could have back, and everybody has their opinion over who that trait should be, Big C. But I'm going to just bring in a couple of thoughts and you give your opinion. I would say the Arizona Cardinals trading Kevin Kolb for the Philadelphia Eagles, and Kolb was injured most of the first season, and eventually it turned out to be a flop for the Cardinals, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Kevin Kolb got one of those first big free agent quarterback contracts. He was a backup in Philadelphia behind Donovan McNabb. And they traded him. Well, they went free agency to Arizona after they lost Kurt Warner, Charlton. And all he did was get hurt as soon as he showed up. 2 years later, he was out of football.
Yeah. Now, another great player that does a lot to help kids and in the group homes and orphan homes, too. Brett Favre does a lot off the scene, even since he's retired, that I wish more people would know about. But you think about the Atlanta Falcons trading Brett Favre to the Green Bay Packers. That was 1992, Big C. Favre, believe it or not, spent his rookie season. He was planted on the bench in Atlanta, thanks to head coach Jerry Glanville. He did not have the prescience to see a guy that would go on to win the Super Bowl just on a different team. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Jerry Glanville had a second-round draft pick out of Southern Mississippi. Didn't like Brett Favre's mentality and shipped him off to Green Bay. The rest is history.
The rest is history. Here's another team, and we talk about them all the time now in today's headlines. Baltimore Ravens traded for Scott Mitchell. Mitchell showed up at training camp. He weighed 270 pounds, and was relegated to third string. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, this was a guy that was drafted by the Dolphins to be the heir apparent to Dan Marino. Things didn't work out in Miami, got shipped off Charlton to Detroit, and left Detroit in free agency going to Baltimore, showed up well overweight, relegated to third string, and his career ended shortly after that.
Well, another player that likes to eat Skittles, he's out of Oakland, California, and he played for the Cal Berkeley Golden Bears, also played high school over in Oakland. I think McClymonds, but I might be wrong. Could have been Oakland Tech. But Buffalo Bills, they traded Marshawn Lynch to the Seattle Seahawks. His first 2 seasons as a 1,000-yard rusher in Buffalo, he wanted to have 4 more in Seattle and a Super Bowl win. I remember when he was at Cal Berkeley, it was he and Discount Double-Check in the backfield for the Golden Bears. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you think about that backfield from the Golden Bears, Charlton, produced 2 Super Bowl winners, Aaron Rodgers and Marshawn Lynch, went on to become beast mode up in Seattle, had 4 consecutive 1,000-yard rushing seasons in Seattle, Charlton, prior to his early retirement.
Yep, and then he still have gotten the ball, at least one more carry in a Super Bowl against Spygate, Big C, in my opinion. And then the Carolina Panthers acquiring defensive tackle Sean Gilbert from the Washington Redskins. They were forced to give up 2 first-round picks for Gilbert, who had an uneventful career for the Carolina Panthers. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, everyone thinks about Le'Veon Bell sitting out a season. Sean Gilbert did it first as a defensive lineman. All of a sudden, Washington wanted to trade him, Charlton, because he wouldn't sign his franchise tender, sent him to Carolina. It was a bust down in Carolina, Charlton. They gave up draft picks for nothing.
Yeah, they gave it up for nothing. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe on iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on the apps that I really love called Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You'll hear from our sponsors. You'll hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. Also launching, you can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity Comcast Television, launching on Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Big C Sports is a billion-dollar industry, and Boys and Girls Sports is the foundation to that billion-dollar industry. And thinking about where billions are made, Chicago Mercantile Stock Exchange, Chicago Bears trading for quarterback Jay Cutler. Chicago traded Kyle Orton, 2 first-round picks and a third-round pick to get Cutler, and they only made the playoffs uno times. Big C, your thoughts?
One time in 8 years of Jay Cutler's career, Charlton, I think they're smarting from that trade because Denver Broncos ended up being the benefactor, and Von Miller was one of those players.
Yeah, they really were. Another team that might want to trade everybody this year coming up, Big C, Cincinnati Bengals traded away receiver Charlie Joyner. Recall that, the San Diego Chargers. Joyner became a 2-time All-Pro and eventually was inducted into the Hall of Fame thanks to his work in San Diego, but it could have been Cincinnati. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, they traded him away, and ironically, Bill Walsh was an offensive coordinator in Cincinnati at the time when they traded away Charlie Joyner, Charlton, to the San Diego Chargers, who went on to become one of the prime members of Air Coryell with the Chargers.
Yeah, that's amazing. Bill Walsh wasn't always a genius, Big C. The Cleveland Browns, they traded up quarterback Johnny Manziel. In the end, Manziel played only 15 games for the Browns, including 8 starts. He completed just 57% of his passes, with as many interceptions as touchdowns. And I know they're saying he's still better than Kaepernick because you don't read numbers, Big C. But give me your thoughts on the great Johnny Manziel, Big C, your thoughts.
This was a one-year hype quarterback in college, Charlton, who had seemed to be a mental problem when he got to the NFL. He kept reading his press clippings, showed up. He had to play against grown men every week, Charlton, and they showed him what life was all about.
Yeah, he beat up a girlfriend and also had his own issues with law, but he stood for the flag, so he must have been okay for the NFL. Dallas Cowboys trading wide receiver Joey Galloway. He found the end zone just 12 times in 4 seasons and never had more than 908 yards receiving in a single season. I thought he was underutilized. Big C, your thoughts?
The Seattle Seahawks are still laughing about that trade, Charlton, and the draft picks that they picked up for Joey Galloway. He was great running straight down the field, Charlton. He just couldn't run a route.
I remember him in a locker room in Oakland, California. He was chiseled, but also I think it was a little bit, what they call when you hear footsteps coming You don't want to always go over the middle for that, Big C. Denver Broncos trading up to draft quarterback Tim Tebow. Tebow provided plenty of magical moments during, I think, of the 2011 season, including an overtime win over the Pittsburgh Steelers in the playoffs, and there were still people saying he can't play the game. Your thoughts, Big C?
Well, he had a magical season for the Denver Broncos. Charlton propelled them to a playoff victory, but the following year they made a trade for Peyton Manning.
Now, I know on the defensive side of the ball, you like a lot of guys that play the defensive side. Detroit Lions, if you recall, acquiring defensive end Pat Swilling from the New Orleans Saints for 2 draft picks, and the Saints used one. They used a pick from Detroit on 2 future Pro Bowlers, fullback Lorenzo Neal out of Fresno State, Big C, and future Hall of Famer left tackle, the great Willie Rowe, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Patrick Swilling was part of one of the greatest linebacking corps in NFL history with the New Orleans Saints. Sam Mills, Vaughn Johnson, Patrick Swilling. You know, these guys, Charlton, were lights out in the 80s. Detroit Lions were desperate for a pass rush. They spent a lot of money in free agency to acquire the no-trade clause out of Patrick Swilling's contract, Charlton, but he never panned out with Detroit.
No, never quite panned out. When you think about another ironic trade, Green Bay Packers traded quarterback John Haddle. I think Green Bay Packers head coach Dan Devine at the time decided, after the Packers started with a 3-3 record, it was 1974, Big C. I was still crawling around on my knees back in 1974, Big C. But you think about what it did. It sent 2 first rounds, 2 second rounds, and a 3rd round pick in the 1975 draft, and another 2nd round pick in the 1976 draft to the Los Angeles Rams for the 34-year-old quarterback. Basically, your thoughts?
Well, you think about the first mega trade in NFL history, and that was with an aging quarterback, John Hadle. And Dan Devine felt that he needed to pull the trigger on that, and he depleted the Green Bay Packers franchise for years to come behind that deal, Charlton.
Yeah, I mean, every time players get an opportunity, going back in time, you realize how you just got to make the most of your opportunity. And when you think about the Houston Texans trading for quarterback Philip Buchanan, the Texans sent to the Raiders both a 2nd round and a 3rd round pick to get him. However, the Texans let him go less than a year and a half later, Big C. So people can make mistakes in their trades. Your thoughts?
Well, Philip Buchanan, had his best time in Oakland, but he came to Houston and he showed that he could not cover any longer. He lost his cover skills, Charlton, and all he could do was cover himself getting out of the door, out of the locker room.
Well, sometimes that's what you got. That's the best time to cover yourself, Big C. I want to bring your thoughts to Indianapolis Colts, the trading away John Elway to the Denver Broncos after selecting him first in the overall 1983 NFL draft. I remember Elway when he came out of Southern California. I think he went to Granada Hills High School and then went to Stanford, played for his father, the great Jack Elway, Big C. And I'll never forget, everybody's dream is to get drafted into a league. And when they wanted him, he was saying, no, I'm not going to play for Indianapolis Colts, Big C. And he got his wish, Big C. Your thoughts?
He got his wish. The Indianapolis Colts buckled to John Elway, and they're still smarting from that, Charlton. He went on to lead Denver to 5 Super Bowl appearances, winning 2.
And then imagine players today, and I just want to draw the contrast. Because people say, it's just talk, my opinion. Well, Cap doesn't want to play. He hasn't done enough to show that he doesn't want to play. And so don't give him a chance. He wants to feed people. And he wants to stop, police brutality and all that stuff. People don't want to hear that. But then you got Elway back in the day, in the 83. He was saying, I'm not going to play for a team. And no one ostracized him from the league. No one said, we're not going to hire this guy. And if you look at the athletes, they're about the same size, but Cap is bigger, stronger, and faster. Just draw the line between back in 83, when Elway said, no, I don't want to play. And Cap saying, I want to play. They gave the white guy the job, and they said the black guy didn't smile enough, Big C, at the interview. Your thoughts?
Well, the difference between media coverage in 1983 versus 2017 with Colin Kaepernick, Charlton, was quite different because you didn't have 24-hour news cycles. You didn't have a mic and a camera in front of a player or somebody else every time you turn around. So the way that players were treated back then versus now is completely opposite.
Yeah, completely opposite, but reality is still the same. One guy said, I don't want to play for you, and they begged him to play. Another guy says, I want to play, and they're saying, well, you don't smile enough. Big C, Jacksonville Jaguars trading up to draft quarterback Blaine Gabbert, who turned out to be a spectacular bust for the Jaguars, as he simply wasn't ready to play in the NFL. The Jaguars took Gabbert over defensive end J.J. Watt, who was selected number 1 later. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when you think about Blaine Gabbert, he fit the mold of the prototypical quarterback. He looked good at 6'5", blonde hair, blue eyes, Charlton. Couldn't throw himself out of a wet paper bag. The Houston Texans, 1 pick later, took J.J. Watt. We know what type of career he's had in the NFL.
Yeah, there's still that paperback test that goes on. It's still alive in the NFL. It's still alive in society. We just got to go forward no matter what color that paperback is. The Kansas City Chiefs, Big C, traded up to draft Ryan Sims. Remember that? In 2002, the NFL draft for defensive tackle Ryan Sims. From the University of North Carolina, the Chiefs sent the Dallas Cowboys a first, a third, a 6th-round pick, and in that year's draft to move up to Sims turned out to be the huge bust. The next 3 players taken after Sims turned out to be all-pro players. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, the hype of college players, Charlton, is not always real. And this was Sims. He rose up the draft boards out of North Carolina State, got to the NFL, and found out the guys are bigger, faster, and stronger, and just could not produce at that level.
Well, another guy that was big, and I like this guy's commercial, is the great Jerome Bettis. They played this pickup football game, flag football. It's on TV. And they brought in Jerome, who weighs like 400 pounds and look at least maybe the TV ad size. But he scored on these old dads, and he said, 49-0. And that's like what he played at Notre Dame at times. The Los Angeles Rams trading Jerome Bettis to the Pittsburgh Steelers in exchange for a 4th-round pick after being named to the Pro Bowl 3 times. Bettis ran for 1,000 yards in his first 6 seasons to help the Steelers eventually win the Super Bowl. It was in 2015, and he was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, this was one of those baffling trades, just like with Marshawn Lynch from the Buffalo Bills to the Seattle Seahawks. The Los Angeles Rams opting to give up on Jerome Bettis after 2 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons and even being named NFL Rookie of the Year. He went on to be the catalyst of that Pittsburgh Steelers vaunted offense back in those days, Charlton. 6 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons and a trip to Canton, along with a Super Bowl victory.
Yeah, and he got the chance to receive handoffs from Big Ben and Roethlisberger also. Big C, the Miami Dolphins, and I know eventually the tide will surface for them again, but they traded away Wes Walker. The New England Patriots traded a 2nd and a 7th-round pick to acquire him. He became an invaluable member of the great Patriots team between 2007 and 2012. Not a big guy like a Randy Moss. He's not an eyeball. He's not going to pass the eyeball test, but he sure could catch a football. Big C, your thoughts?
This guy became a consecutive 100 reception in a season receiver, Charlton, for the New England Patriots. He was the go-to guy for Tom Brady, his safety net for 5 years there with the Patriots, back-to-back years, Charlton, and also winning Super Bowl titles.
Yeah, and when you think about another player, a Georgia guy, I think he said when he was young, he thought his name was Cut Wood because his parents made him go out and cut so much wood, Big C, but it actually paid off. Minnesota Vikings acquired Herschel Walker. The Dallas Cowboys, once dubbed the greatest train robbery, Jimmy Johnson using all of those extra draft picks to move around the NFL draft. And he built one of the greatest dynasties of football in the 90s, the Dallas Cowboys, that won him 3 Super Bowls. And I think Herschel Walker even played for the New Jersey Generals at one time. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, Herschel Walker was the best player on a dysfunctional Dallas Cowboy team. Jimmy Johnson knew he had an asset in Herschel Walker. He traded him to the Minnesota Vikings for a total of 11 players and draft picks combined, which became the nucleus of the 1990s decade for the Dallas Cowboys. Many all-pro players, Charlton, and 3 Super Bowl victories came from that Herschel Walker trade.
Yeah, he was just a guy that when I saw him, he was kind of as big and strong and fast as Herschel Walker was, Big C, he was not someone that had a lot of cutback moves. If he got the corner, he could give you that shoulder, but not to run around you, Big C, but to run you over. That's how dominant he was as a running back, and I don't think you see guys like him nowadays. People don't want to get hit anymore. Maybe that's a good reason. New England Patriots trading away defensive end Chandler Jones. Jones had led the Patriots with 12.5 sacks in 2015, and Jones also amassed 11 sacks and 4 forced fumbles for the Cardinals in 2016 and 17 sacks in 2017. Big C, your thoughts?
You know, the Patriots, as good as they are defensively, they still have not found anybody they were equal to Chandler Jones, Charlton, prior to this year when they brought Chandler Jones back, and now he's part of that vaunted Patriot defense.
You think about another team that's won they've won a lot of games down south. New Orleans Saints, the 1999 draft day deal that acquired running back the great Ricky Williams. Up in Smoke, he could be in the Cheech and Chong movie Up in Smoke. Ricky Williams later in his life came out of San Diego as a high school predator, Big C. I think he went on to Texas, also played for the Longhorns. Not only did Mike Ditka trade away every pick he had in the 1999 draft to the Washington Redskins, he also traded away a first-round pick, the ensuing draft, after Williams ran for less than 900 yards, and the rookie with Ditka was fired after the season. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, he only ran for about 900 yards, Charlton, and the Saints only had 3 wins.
Yeah.
But come up the next draft, they had no draft picks. So
yeah.
Ditka had to go. Ricky Williams went up in smoke.
Yeah. And Ditka didn't like Colin Kaepernick standing for liberty and justice for all either, Big C. The New York Giants traded away Sam Huff. The worst trade in the New York Giants history might have taken place way back in the day, but it's a doozy after losing 3 straight NFL championships in the early 60s. Giants head coach Ali Sherman started cleaning house, trading away Huff. Not only weakens the Giants, weakened the bluster of a deal. It halted the division rival Washington Redskins. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the Mara family were in love with Huff, and they didn't want him gone.
Yep,
and all of a sudden, Ali Sherman said, I got to get rid of this and clean house.
Yeah.
He sent him to the division rival Washington Redskins, and that was a catalyst of the Redskins building their defense, going on to be a dominant team in the 70s in the NFL.
Yeah, I remember that, Big C. The New York Jets trading up to draft Mark Sanchez out of USC. Pete Carroll said, stay a little bit longer. Mark said, no, I want the money. In the 2009 NFL draft, the New York Jets traded their first and second round picks plus 3 players. There was Kenyon Coleman, Abraham Elam, and Barrett Ratliff to the Cleveland Browns to move up to the 5th pick overall, and they secured Sanchez. And Sanchez, he fell short of expectations, but I will give him credit. They made the playoffs twice under Sanchez, which the Jets can't say that in many, many moons. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, they went to back-to-back AFC championship games, Charlton, came up a little short. The Cleveland Browns did not benefit from that trade, Charlton, so the Jets actually became the better team out of that deal.
Yeah, I thought so. I've always thought that Sanchez was a flying quarterback at USC and also a flying quarterback for the Jets, but things don't always bounce your way. The Oakland Raiders trading away Khalil Mack, even with the bounty of picks the Raiders received from Chicago in exchange for Khalil Mack. It seemed like a terrible trade decision, especially considering Mack again appears to be prime in the conversation for NFL Defensive Player of the Year. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, that trade looked terrible in the first year that the Raiders sent Khalil Mack to the Bears. The Bears ended up with a 12-win season, one of the top defenses in the NFL. Now the tides have turned. The Raiders are in second place in the AFC West, Charlton, potentially going to make the playoffs, and the Bears are out of the playoff contention.
Yeah, isn't that something, Big C? The Philadelphia Eagles trading away the great LaShawn McCoy. When Chip Kelly arrived on the scene in town, despite them publicly saying that they got along, Kelly traded away LaShawn McCoy. I think someone said about Jerry Jones, he can tell you he loves you, and I'm trading you in the same breath, Big Z, but it happens all over the NFL. They traded him one of the most beloved members of the franchise for linebacker Kiki Alonso. In just his second game with the Eagles, Alonso tore his ACL. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, LaShawn McCoy went on to the Buffalo Bills. Charlton had an outstanding couple of seasons. Now he's with the Kansas City Chiefs, being very productive in that backfield. And we know that Chip Kelly's out of the NFL.
Yeah, I hope he holds onto the ball a little bit better, Big C. I know it's not heavy. Just tuck it in under your pads. Pittsburgh Steelers trading up to draft Daniel Sepulveda, the former All-American punter. He suffered a rash of injuries during his time in Pittsburgh, tearing his ACL 2 different times. And by 2012, the Steelers had moved on from Big C. Your thoughts?
Charlton, he had to find another job other than playing football. You think about a punter tearing his ACL twice, wasn't a great athlete.
And you know, when you tear it twice, how do you come back? It's amazing how great technology is nowadays. I know players can get hurt, but it's like they put you back together again like Humpty Dumpty from back in the day. San Diego Chargers, they traded up to draft quarterback the great Ryan Leaf in the 1998 draft. The San Diego Chargers, they were desperate for a quarterback, and they traded Eric Metcalf, a first-round pick, and a second-round pick to the Cardinals it just moved up one spot to take Leaf. The rest is unmitigated disaster. He just always had some problems mentally, Big C, it seems. Your thoughts?
You know, Eric Metcalf was an all-pro, multi-purpose player in the NFL. Ryan Leaf was the second quarterback taken in that draft. Peyton Manning was the first. But Ryan Leaf couldn't handle the pressure. And they already had Doug Flutie, who was a winner, but they didn't like his size, and they went with Ryan Leaf, and he became an immediate bust.
Yeah, and now he's doing some college football. San Francisco 49ers trading for the great Simpson. 1979, the 49ers, they didn't mind taking a chance on the aging superstar from San Francisco. They acquired Simpson in exchange for 5 future draft picks. Simpson had only 4 rushing touchdowns in his last 3 years in his career in San Francisco, but it was nice for the hometown kid to end in the city by the bay. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, he had been running to the ground in Buffalo, but Bill Walsh needed a marketing tool in his first year as a head coach with the 49ers, and he traded for Simpson.
Yeah.
His productivity just wasn't there as a member of the Niners. He never gained more than 700 yards in a season.
Yeah, that's true, and he went on to do work in television. Big C, the Seattle Seahawks traded for Kelly Stouffer, the quarterback whose last name sounded a lot like Stovetop Stuffing. Basically, he played as well as a Stovetop Stuffing for that coveted team as the team coveted him a lot back in the day. Big C, your thoughts?
A lot of hype on Kelly Stouffer coming out of Colorado State in college, Charlton. They made a trade with the Cardinals to move up to get that draft pick, and they're thinking we shouldn't have made that trade.
Yeah, now another guy that you'll see all over television covering NFL games, the great Steve Young, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They traded away the great Steve Young to the 49ers, and Young had only won 5 games in 2 years for the Buccaneers. I remember he started out in the XFL or the USFL or the LA Express, Big C. I think they gave him $40 million, and I doubt if he gave it back, but he sure did play much better when he played for the Niners. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when Steve Young came into the NFL, Charlton, he lacked confidence. He lacked good coaching. He was down in Tampa, and the franchise was put on his shoulders, and he struggled. When he came to the 49ers, he had an opportunity to sit and learn behind Joe Montana and listen to Bill Walsh, Charlton, and he developed into one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL all time.
And one of the all-time greats at BYU, Big C. Number, I want to go to the final 2, the Houston Oilers, and I think that dome is still down there in Texas, but they still have it there. Houston Oilers, they traded away the great Steve Largent. He was a 4th-round pick in the 1976 NFL draft. They decided to get some salvage value from this seemingly wasted pick, trading him to the Seattle Seahawks at the time when they played up in the Kingdome. And the end of the preseason of Largent's rookie year, but he's still a name that's noticed and mentioned up in Seattle for one of the greatest all-time players. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, he was a 4th-round draft pick out of the University of Tulsa, Charlton. He lacked size, he lacked speed as far as what the Houston Oilers were looking for in their high-powered offense of that era, being led by Earl Campbell. But he got to Seattle, Charlton, along with Jim Zorn, who was a free agent quarterback that they picked up from the Dallas Cowboys at that time. And the rest was history. He became Seattle's all-time leading receiver. Somehow he ended up in the NFL Hall of Fame, and now he's a congressman, Charlton.
Yeah, he's settling. Now he's laying down a lot, Big C. And then finally, the Washington Redskins trading Champ Bailey for Clinton Portis. Bailey spent nearly a decade anchoring Denver's secondary as one of the best cover corners in the NFL, Big C, representing the Broncos. He was an 8-time Pro Bowler, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you know, when you think about Clinton Portis, he was one of that long run of running backs who came out of the University of Miami. He got to the Washington Redskins. He had a couple of productive years, but Champ Bailey became one of the all-time best NFL cornerbacks, Charlton, and ended up in the NFL Hall of Fame after a couple of Super Bowl victories.
As we go down that long list of players, Big C, and you go way back into the 70s and even the 60s, and you look at some of the opportunities that everybody got to say, just because you start off one spot, it doesn't mean you're going to end with that spot. Relationships are the same. You don't always finish with who you start with, but life is about opportunity. And when you get enough opportunity, then you get the chance to compete. And that's why I don't believe Cap will get an opportunity in the league, because there's nefarious things that go on. I think as long as you're an African-American male, you're respected more. If you walk around, don't wag your own tail. If you're intelligent, don't let people know it. Always kowtown, yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am. I'm not being flippant, I just think that happens in society. If you spoke like POTUS, and you're President Obama, they would have gotten him out of the White House a long time ago. Mitch McConnell said that. But when you have the chance to pass the paper bag test, you have a thing called privilege, not by God or nature, but by men. And I just want to make sure, no matter what we do on Big C Sports, I want to encourage people to Google. That's so important. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Speaker.com. And the apps that I really love are Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You'll hear from our sponsors. You'll hear Welcome to the Show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are going. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast Television, launching on Roku TV, Apple TV, and smart TVs all over the universe. I want to close out our thoughts today on college football. The college football playoff rankings. Again, just like a guy being drafted, you get a chance to prove it on the field. But when we have these rankings, it's not decided on the field. It's decided in a boardroom. That's why I think we need at least six teams. Have the 1 and 2 set out on a bye. That's my opinion, Big C, but I want to go down and get your thoughts on these teams. Number 1, LSU comes out by a lot of the media, and they've earned it on the field. Number 2, Ohio State. Number 3, we have Clemson. Number 4, we have Georgia. I want to start with those 4, and right now it didn't start that way when the season began, but that's what we have now, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Georgia was one of the top-ranked teams when the season started up until they had that loss against South Carolina. But you look at the top 3 teams, all 3 of those teams are unbeaten, and they're rightfully so in the 1, 2, and 3 spots in the country. I think they are the best teams in the country. When we look at 4, Georgia is going to have to play LSU in the SEC championship game, Charlton. So the tide for one of those teams, and no pun to Alabama intended on that, will change. One of those teams will lose. If Georgia loses, they're out of the college football playoff. Alabama is sitting at number 5. They did not move because they won. Even though they lost Tua, I think Mac Jones is a very capable quarterback. In his one start, he had no problems against Arkansas, even though it was Arkansas. The Pac-10 is the next 2 teams up at Oregon and Utah, Charlton. They're going to face each other in the Pac-12 championship game.
Yeah.
They have to hope that at least 2 of these teams in front of them lose, because they're not going to catapult anybody if 2 teams don't lose, Charlton, being at 6 and 7 in the rankings.
Well, on the West Coast perspective, and there's a good old boys that are sending some red wine. They're sending red wine to Alabama for the Auburn game, and they're sending some wine to Georgia for the LSU game, and they're also sending wine out to Utah, Big C. So we'll see what happens if there'll be a duck invited to the granddaddy of them all called the college football playoffs. And then Penn State, Oklahoma, and Minnesota, they're just going to be teams that argue about what better bowl they can play in. I love this time of year, Big C. We all get to eat food that we like. You can talk to family and friends that sometimes you don't always meet up with. And the holidays makes that great for football. And no matter what happens with the world of college football, I just want to get your thoughts on the state of college football now. We talk about ratings being down for NBA. I think it's because of tablets. Do you like the way football is right now, or what would you like to see improve it, Big C? Your thoughts?
I mean, there's nothing you can really improve about the college game, Charlton. It's being played at a heightened level. And there's always going to be controversy about the playoffs, but then you would punish if you had 6 teams in the playoffs, because you're going to make 4 teams play and 2 teams sit down, so they're going to be forced to play that extra game, Charlton. That is a punishment of fairness. The way they have it sit down with 4 teams, it's going to maintain that at least for the next 8 years. It's not going to change.
Well, it's all about discussion and having that conversation. And as the good old boys from the Pac-12 say, just ask the question. Big C, back in the day, there was a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, as you talk about the college football playoffs, Charlton, and the boys in the Pac-12 talk about ask the question. All you have to do is go through the season and not lose a game. You never have to worry about making the college football playoffs.
Well, that sounds like a bargain, Big C. What a bargain. And you can get a bargain, too. every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.